Okay, so we were just talking about this, about data centers in space, and you do a little bit of space investing yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a core theme to our global resilience thesis, which you mentioned earlier. It's really space is sort of we see as very much nascent, and there's going to be a ton of opportunity for companies building off of the back of lower launch costs enabled by SpaceX. So it's an incredibly dynamic space right now.
And so what timeline have you guys modeled out here at GC in terms of data centers in outer space? Is it inside 3 years? What are we looking at?
And I think the guest before me said never to bet against Elon. I think, we're very much led by the founders. The best founders will always sort of turn whatever timeline we have on its head. And I think we're looking closely at how cooling technology changes, how power changes in space, all of those things we're getting smarter on to be able to help support our founders for sure.
Well, look, I want to ask you about the defense tech sector because that's also an area that you play in a lot at GC. We saw the news this week that the government has, is dedicating this label, the supply chain risk designation, to Anthropic, and we've been trying to unpack on the show what that means for Anthropic and for the companies in its orbit. And the question I have for you as an investor in this sector is, I mean, what does that designation mean to you, and how does it change your calculus about which companies to invest in?
Yeah. I mean, first, so we're proud partners to Anthropic, and as you mentioned, we've also been investing in defense and resilience at General Catalyst for 20 plus years. And so, as a starting point, as we think about sort of the news in the last couple weeks, the conversation of how technologists, private companies, the investment community, and the government navigate working together is a longstanding conversation. You have, history can be instructive here. You have examples like Google and Project Maven in 2018, or the Pentagon's JEDI contract in 2019, which was awarded to Microsoft over Amazon, and then redesigned later on to actually be a different type of contract awarded to four different companies. And so, with respect to Anthropic's work, Anthropic gives American companies the best chance of success, and open debate with the government is the longest held American tradition. And so, in our view, Anthropic and the DoW have much more in common than they have differences in both believing deeply in defending America. I think as investors, I think what this goes to show, and my takeaway is just how startups are building critical infrastructure, and how fast the government is thinking about adopting technology to build resilience in very critical sort of core pillars. And this is an important area that we're seeing founders, especially at the early stage, leaving their previous jobs, leaving their businesses, and wanting to build in service of that. And that's especially true at the seed stage with so much going on.
What are those pillars? Because when we talk about defense tech, I think we just call it defense tech, and then there's so much more to it. I'm cognizant. You know, uh, i- I sort of think of it in AI terms. There's the application layer, the infrastructure layer, the cloud layer, the chip layer. I mean, that's one way to segment the sector. But when you look at defense tech, I mean, how do you segment the market?
It's true to your point. We don't typically call it defense tech within GC. We really think about it in terms of global resilience. And so that includes defense is absolutely a part of that. That includes industrials, healthcare, how we take care of our senior population, cybersecurity, and financial inclusion around the world. And so it's very much about what are the types of technologies that improve and sort of create economically resilient and healthy societies. And defense has been a huge part of that. We've been very lucky to work with Anduril since the seed, and it's an incredible company. Taking a little bit of SpaceX's playbook in terms of vertically integrating and building these end-to-end systems, and so you have companies at that layer. Castellian is another example, and in our portfolio, you have also an infrastructure layer, which is where you get companies that are building in power and wire harnessing and connectivity and a lot of these components that sort of make up the industrial base of the US, where you can find sort of these trillion-dollar niches of very sort of unsexy businesses, but really are critically important to building those end systems. And then you have the software layer, which for us is much less about operational leverage or operational efficiency in the business. Of course, that's a piece of it, but much more about how software is actually adding to the value of the end product and to the experience of the user. And we see that as sort of a concrete difference today in what's possible in building software-enabled hardware.
Now, all these founders that you are investing in, and I understand that global resilience is a much broader portfolio
Mhm.
than just defense. But defense tech has sort of been such an interesting sector to watch. I wonder the founders that you find in that area, do they are they different from the other founders? Because I imagine it's a different customer group, it's a different skill set, it's a different level of regulation that they have to deal with. I mean, I wonder who these people are and also how you evaluate that at GC. Are you hiring former government people to help assess that?
Absolutely, I think to all of the above. So the bar, to your point, is very high, and I, and we as a firm look for founders with ambition, fluency, and vision. And our job and what we think about is we meet founders where they are and then give them access to insanely powerful advantages to help them realize their ambition. And when you're working in defense, oftentimes the best in class teams, just like in any sector, have a set of superpowers, but you need to be able to build across hardware, manufacturing, selling potentially commercially, but also selling to government. And then, of course, be just as capable on software as any other team, if not better, because you're operating across different domains. And so the teams that we work with are often multidisciplinary. You see that in Anduril's leadership. You also see that in many others with nominal, Cameron, Bryce, Jason. They all come from a variety of backgrounds, and so that's primarily what we're looking for. And to your point, we spend a lot of time thinking about how do we go and support these teams working in completely new domains. And this is something that we've been, again, investing in for many years. And so we think about that foundation. And one is the type of capital solutions that they need, right? So sometimes, is venture can be an incredible solution for these types of companies. And other times there may be other ways to scale inorganically or to think about partnering with other types of capital solutions, sort of inside GC and also outside GC.
But is it
That
also
is like
who you're hiring at GC? I mean, tell us what
absolutely.
who are the
We
leaders?
so potentially to the earlier point around, this conversation around Anthropic, we have our General Catalyst Institute in DC, which is primarily focused on bringing together the public and private communities to educate our founders on all different types of levels of government. And we have folks who have been very senior in the intelligence community, folks like Scott Howell, who was former commander of JSOC, folks like Teresa Carlson, who previously ran AWS's public sector business, who are day in, day out with us, supporting sort of the most ambitious founders that are tackling these spaces. And it takes not just capital; it takes that level of expertise and that experience, and it also takes new ways of thinking about creating distribution advantages for our companies.
Now, how do you think about investing in defense tech across different administrations? Because I think there's a lot of people that might suggest that, hey, it's getting a lot of attention right now in the current administration because of their attitude towards some of these technologies. Could the game change 2 years from now? We have midterms coming up. Could it even change then? I mean, how do you think about this when attitudes can change?
It's a great question. I think it goes back to the teams we work with and being agile, not just across administrations, but I think there's a lot of shifts happening in technology as well that founders need to be agile for. And so shifting administrations. Anduril was founded in 2017 and has worked across various types of administrations. We again have are focused on those public-private partnerships that endure well beyond the 4 years or the 8 years that a specific administration is in office. And we also think globally. We are lucky to have a global platform at GDC where founders can think about obviously selling into the U.S., but also my colleagues are in Europe working with policymakers on shaping what the future of AI looks like. My colleagues are in India doing sort of the same, thinking about local capabilities there. And so we not only think about building relationships that endure well beyond the specific administration, but also we work with founders who are so ambitious that they're thinking both about the US and about India and about Europe, and also still have this ground shifting under them in terms of needing to keep up with AI. And that's what's incredibly exciting is the agility we're seeing with some of the best teams operating here.
Great. Well, Alexa, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Alexa Liautaud, a partner at General Catalyst here on TITV.